There we go. That should work. Ba-doop doop doop. What do we have here? Okay, that looks right. Okay, I'm live. I can't believe it. I'm actually live. Well, will anyone show up today? That is the question. Okay, so let's get cracking here. I'm just going to doodle for a bit, and then if people show up and there's, fun things to talk about, then by gum and by crikey, I do have a few things that might be interesting to talk about regarding what I've been up to this week. So, just adjusting my... Oh, Darren's here. Darren caught me. He caught me working on this animation challenge. Well, you're the right guy to have around, Darren. I'll tell you why. Because you're a competent programmer, so you can relate to a little bit of what I've been up to this week. The bad news is I was trying to code over the weekend. I'm taking what I'm doing is I'm remastering my most successful film. Okay, so like 15th anniversary director's cut kind of thing, and I just wanted to see if I can port the thing into Blender, because I really like Blender 5 for video editing. If the truth be known, it's really not quite as performant as Vegas on Windows, but anyway, it turns out that the Blender Python API for the video sequence editor is truly a horrific spaghetti code mess of changing, I don't want to say standards. I mean, the way they've done it for years, they changed. And it's easy to miss key details, like the fact that the clips that are in your video timeline are no longer called, like they changed the name sequences to strips and kind of didn't tell anybody. Things like that. So it was an arduous process, and ultimately did not work. And the reason is that this is something you'll be able to relate to. Imagine a software system where you run into this all the time in software development. So you're creating, a system or a data structure or an underlying model for your software. Okay, so this is common. So, the most obvious top level thing would be the window, or, in the view model type of paradigm, you try to keep your data separated from your interface and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the long and the short of it is that the problem you always run into is that, well, let's just relate it to Blender. So in Blender, here's the video sequence editor where you've got tracks, let's say. Okay, so then you've got an object that represents the sequence. So, and I'll make this short so it's not too painful. So within that sequence, of course, you have clips of video or audio. So now the quintessential problem with development, especially of larger systems, is the responsibility for the parameters and properties of each of these clips the responsibility of the clip, which is kind of what you'd prefer in a more object-oriented approach, or is keeping track of this list of clips actually the purview of the containing object? So suffice to say that in Blender, this relationship is so confused and incestuous, and the impression I got working with it literally for probably 8 to 10 hours is that it's a common thing you see with software is that they have adopted some fairly easy peasy approaches so that when the newbie comes to Blender and just wants to drag, like they would never use Python to do it, of course, that would never happen. They would only ever drag clips, say, from a folder into Blender, that type of thing. So they make these sorts of assumptions, which means that the underlying API gets short shrift and is sloppy. And so things that are newbie things are easy and work really, really well. This is probably echoing other rants I've done in the past. Things that are what you'd actually have to do in the real world if you're actually creating, a show. So you're dealing with thousands of files and terabytes of data and blah, blah, blah. Like in the real world where the ostensibly money is made, that's the only thing you ever do, right? Well, nobody in the real world would actually be doing that. And so what happens is you wind up with this API where everything that's meaningful to me, which means I want to be able to control everything with Python, doesn't work at all. And I say it's incestuous because it's really bizarre. Like you would think, like if you drag a clip into a video editor, what are the properties of that clip? It has a start point, it has an end point, and then the contents in the video would be slipped because the first frame of the sequence where the left edge of your clip is not necessarily, you're not necessarily wanting to start this playing back on frame 0 or 1, right? Because that's what editing is. You're going to grab this left edge and drag it a little bit here and cut it here and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So in Blender 5, there's some weird shit that happens where when you import something with Python, it creates this negative hold offset where, and if you look at the properties panel, if you change this, it changes that. And so there's literally no way to just make the video play back. And then it does really weird stuff. Like if you do this to a batch of files, the first one might import correctly and actually play back like a video, and none of the rest of them will. And the reason I say it's incestuous is because what's going on is that to make it easier for you, like I can think of the simplest example might be this. Here's my video edit. Okay, I'm a newbie, and all I'm going to do is drag a video into the interface. And so let's say that video clip goes this far, and it starts at the first frame and plays. Everyone knows that the only thing you would ever do next, ever, is drag another clip in and just drop it so that it gets butted up to this one and they're all in sequence. The problem is, in the real world, no editor ever actually works that way. Okay? Like never. But to a newbie, you look at that and go, it's like magic. I can drag it in. I can edit video in Blender. How cool. Which, of course, you've been able to do for years. It's just more performant in Blender 5. Okay? So then what happens is the containing video sequence object seems to be keeping track of like these offsets. Remember, a clip only has 3 parameters, assuming the underlying software does in fact know how to play it. Like whether it's an MP4, whether it's an AVI, whether it's an image sequence, doesn't matter. As long as the underlying software, Blender, can interpret the type of file, then the only question becomes, it becomes the quintessential programming bugaboo, which is, are you good at counting? So you don't get like off by 1 errors all the time, which is tricky because in Blender, it's basically 0 indexing, blah, blah, blah. So the incestuous part is, it would be like you put a video in the sequencer with Python, and because one was already placed, internally this object, the sequence itself, that object is keeping track of some stuff. It's keeping track of where this clip ended, blah, blah, blah. And what happens is, instead of the relevant data, of which there are really only 3 data points, start, stop, and the position within the video file that you're supposed to start playing, for the sake of the edit. There's really only 3 data points you have to keep track of. It's like nothing. Okay? So what happens is, because this is keeping track of stuff, it creates these, I'm not really using the right terminology, but basically it creates these offsets so that the next thing you put in is being modulated by the fact that this one was there first, which you would never want. You would never want that. You would want to just drag one thing in. It's treated independently. It's got its own start. It's got its own end, and it's got its own slip or offset, you might say. That's it. It's as simple can be. But it appears, after working with it all weekend, that they're trying so hard to make it easy for the newbies that they've just given up on the most basic common sense of what you would want an edit environment to do. It sounds crazy, and it's so bad that I almost wasn't going to mention it because it's so ridiculous. The only logical conclusion is, Dave, you must be a complete idiot. You've got to be the worst programmer ever. And I'm sure those Blender guys couldn't possibly have been that sloppy. But I'll tell you, I worked really closely with Google Gemini over the whole weekend, and we're just looking at one thing after another. And the final conclusion was, this is such a spaghetti code mess. That what the API says you can do and what will happen as a result literally just doesn't happen. It's like, it's completely not accurate. Yeah, it's really sick, actually. It's pretty gross. Mission creep. Yeah, you might call it that. I'm bumming because I was excited about Blender 5 as a video editing tool, and it still is. But not if you want to do what I wanted to do in that case, which is a really big deal. I want to take, I've got these edit decision lists that I can export from Vegas. So we're talking about a movie that was edited 15 years ago. Okay? So you just export an EDL. Well, what is the EDL? It's just a list. This file starts at this frame, ends at this frame. Here's the offset. It's like there's nothing there, really. It's the most simple thing in the world. You're just taking a list of, you've got a little stack of bricks over here, and the whole idea is just pick up the first brick and set it over here in the same position relative to the space that it's in, and then take the next brick and set it down. That's it. That's all you're doing. And they can't get that right. It's like you go, and I get it. I do get it. The pathway for all software is the pathway of the newbie. It's what you see in the AI space right now. Like, the whole thing in the AI space is basically this. And I can tell you, after working with Gemini is the best of the bunch at the moment. Like, for a while there, Mistral was better. I kind of liked Claude Haiku, but okay, so basically Gemini is kicking everybody's ass in terms of, with programming problems anyway. Okay? But the problem with the AI space is this. This is what actually happens in the real world. We want to wow you with really sexy demos, sexy in the software sense, and impressive demos, okay? Like the plugin I talked about the other day in Blender that takes a cluster of sketchy outlines of your character and derives a nice clean ink line, basically. In practice, it doesn't work at all. Like, it's completely worthless. Okay, but in the demos, it looks amazing. And that's what's going on in the AI space is, let's wow you with the demos and get people preferably locked into some sort of subscription before they realize just how really spectacularly badly the tool sucks, right? And what the AI is really getting right is the worst of humanity, which makes sense because it was trained by humans and trained on stuff from the internet posted by humans. So what am I talking about, the worst of humanity? Think about the guy that comes into the job application, has absolutely no clue about the actual requirements of the job, okay? But they know the language. They know how to use the jargon of their industry in order to kind of sort of fake like maybe they know what they're doing. And when you ask them a hard question, they bullshit. They just make stuff up and hope they can blow it past you, right? So the astute HR person knows what questions to ask to ferret out the people that are the posers. But the point is that in the corporate world, this is often rewarded. What's rewarded is presentation and performance, not actual under the hood competence, which there's a whole lot of things you can say about that, because competence is something that's earned over time by making a lot of mistakes and gaining experience. And, so we're not trying to beat up on the kid who presents that way. What I'm saying is, this is what AI is really good at. It's good at taking, like you give it a prompt and you're going to get, and you're looking for information. So this is basically from a programming paradigm, not so much like generating pictures and stuff like that. Okay, so what you do is you say, well, here's what I need. And the amount of information that you need to answer that question, as it were, is like 2 lines. There's like nothing there. So then you say, well, that doesn't feel magical. That's like a Google search, really. It doesn't feel magical. It doesn't suck me into where I'm like, oh my God, where do I go to pay $20 a month? Because I just want to have this. It's so amazing, right? So in order to wow you, what we're doing is we're saying, well, okay, let's wrap that 1 or 2 lines of information in a more human syntax where it starts out with, oh yeah, that's got to be frustrating. I can help you with that. So they start by saying something like that. And then at the end, there's always a suggestive cell. Okay, would you like to do this or would you like to do that next? When in fact you want to do neither, right? You just wanted the information. And so, and then when it makes a mistake, it apologizes profusely, and then we'll make the same mistake again. So what happens is if you're an astute or if you're a more experienced or more demanding user, you find out very quickly, this is a useful tool, but you can only look at it as sort of it's like having a kind of a not particularly impressive colleague in the room who's just kind of there that you can bounce ideas off of. And it is useful. I mean, it's kind of useful, right? But you got to know in your mind that they're going to make all kinds of mistakes. If they're not sure about the answer, they will get nervous and just kind of make something up and sort of try to BS their way through. That is literally what AI does right now. And what they're trying to do is gain as much market share and get us committed to the dollars for data centers, which obviously are mostly for just collecting data. It's not like it's for calculation purposes, although some of it is, right? Before we all realize just how bad it sucks. The problem is it's catching up. People are figuring out already just how bad it really is. And it's like, this is kind of neat, but it's not worth my money. It's not worth paying for. Okay, so anyway, that's what I did over the weekend. What's going on? Well, with the animation challenge, I'm basically saying I need to animate this girl in a static position. So if you look at I guess I should just put the end of the sequence here, stop marker. So let's just play this. Okay, so we really need to probably reduce this to 12 frames per second. Boop. So she's not going to be doing that action the whole time, but that's something that I know is going to happen. And so obviously she's not moving. So the concept here, let me, for those who maybe are new or whatever, or don't know what's going on, I'll pull up the Blender 5 project that has the great. He provides context for what I'm trying to do here and show. So, all right, I'm gonna have to browse for this because I actually moved some folders around. So I'm gonna go open and I guess that'll work. Okay, so that's the animation challenge, and so what's gonna happen is that early in the run here, the dash down the hill, the girl's going to drift into, and she's going to drift past. So all of the animated action happens while she's moving. But there's no point in animating that movement into this. I need to just have her as a static image doing whatever she's going to do as if she wasn't moving. And in point of fact, that's important because she's not actually moving. It's actually the camera that's moving. So she'll drift past him, and then I'm gonna have to really time it carefully so that she looks excited. She notices him, looks kind of excited, and then starts dancing around. And of course, her head turns to look back at him once she gets past him. So don't worry about the characterization of this guy. That's all going to be different. But the way I'm visualizing it, I have to pack all that with the girl, so that once we get to the end here, once we get around here, we'll see her running and slowly like catching up with him. Just as the thing ends, she's almost caught him, right? So this is like the hillbilly girl that notices and falls in love with the hillbilly guy and then decides to chase after him and see if she can, get along. Okay, so let me think about this for a second. So this is an interesting challenge because, let me see here. He's going to be moving at the pace that these things are moving, obviously. So you could think of her as being located on one of these dots. So this is the part that's really challenging, and it's especially challenging for us dyslexic types, is that once she's here, she has to be basically running at about the same pace he does and simply taking larger steps. Because that's the only way, because obviously everything's moving to the left as he's running to the right. The only way she would actually catch him is if she's running just a little faster. And the way that would happen is by just basically taking bigger steps, as I say. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking. All right, I'm going to pop the chat back up on the other screen so I can see what's going on. Okay, and so Darren made a comment about the software thing. You know, it's just the way it is. I mean, I shouldn't complain too much. The fact that we have Blender, you know, these open source tools, they're amazing. You know, they're just awesome. But when you kind of know a little bit more about things, you can tend to get a little demanding and probably annoying, frankly. So sorry about that. But anyway, so here's the thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do, Darren, are you still here? Because I actually have a question about the animation challenge that you might be able to answer. My question, I'll just spit it out there and see if anybody answers. My question is, as far as the rules go, does it have to be 100% hand-drawn? Like, okay, so let me actually, other people that might want to try this challenge maybe would, you know, maybe some of the ideas I'm about to share would be helpful. Like I could initially she would be looking the other way, or she'd just be looking around, because the whole idea is that she turns her head to point this way and then she notices him. Okay, so a lot happens in a very short time, but the salient point is that she would really be, you know, she's kind of over here like this, looking down this way, right? Just kind of doing her thing. And then all of a sudden, probably she's going to do one of these, you know, like the mask. She's something, I'll see how it plays, but the idea would be like she would see him and wow, she's excited. So it's kind of a Tex Avery kind of thing. And then of course she would settle down into a pose more like this, but she's probably going to be smiling. Okay, so my question about the rules is, I could take this head and flip it, okay, and then work with it this way, and then later flip it, and you know, with some transitional tweens. But the point is that if that level of automation is not allowed, then we can still do it that way, but we just have to have a final step where we actually draw over top of the, you know, more automated or, you know, animated translation based kinds of things that we might do. So I could build this thing up. Like a good example too would be her arms. If we're going to do rubber hoses, we could use the plastic tool to get a really nice rubber hose effect and animate it very quickly. And if that's not allowed, which I think it's not, I don't know, but if you're saying it is allowed, then, you know, let me know. But if that's not allowed, then so that's okay then, huh? Okay, so I can use the plastic tool. If I can, then I definitely will, because for rubber hose animation, like, what could be better than that? So my thought was, if I had to, yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't be allowed. Is that's like your handy dandy tech support person saying, yeah, it should work. We all know that means you're going to get down to the last minute and find out, oh, by the way, you can't do that. I probably need to check the rules, but anyway, my thinking for anyone else that might be thinking about this is, if there's a final step where you have to take the stuff that you did with the plastic tool or whatever and just trace over it one time, yeah, fine. You know, that's going to be quick because you're not having to spend a lot of time thinking. If it is allowed, Well, actually, whether it is or isn't, it's looking to me like it would be really good policy to break this character up into multiple pieces, because honestly, her head, her abdomen, maybe even, I kid you not, separately her boobs, because I think they're going to be bouncing around a bit. Like, we're going to have some fun with the boobs. And definitely the hips, this sort of umbrella-shaped thing with the feet is probably, like, this is a piece all of its own. This is a piece all of its own. The head is, and then you've got the rubber hoses for the hands, you know, with the hands at the end. He's not really that fussed. Yeah, obviously I didn't mean that in any disparaging way, but you know how it is, man. You know, whenever somebody who is, you know, you're dealing with some consequential situation. You know, I have to pick up a prescription. Is it going to be sent to the CVS on Anthony Street? And the person on the phone says, "Yeah, it should go there. Yeah, it should." Well, in point of fact, it's way the hell over on Goshen Road. That's literally something I've had to deal with recently. It's like, you know, I think one of the keys there is just lower your expectations a bit and understand that this is something I'm working on, okay, because I am quite the rancher. You know, just remember that everybody out there has their own cross to bear, and they're all trying generally to do a good job for you, right? So don't beat up on them too much when they get it wrong. Okay, so I like that. What do you think? That's a cool looking head. Okay, and we can actually just use the A key, the animation tool, to animate it probably. At least the broad movements, which means basically flipping it. We can do it that way. Okay, so her eyes. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to do it this way. I'm going to go darn it. I wish we could. I need to change the default. But for now, I'll just copy this over here. Fortunately, I can. Save my work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put her eyes and mouth on a separate layer, because then I'll be able to take the plastic tool and just bolt up a situation like this with her hair, so that her hair can, like, you know, be going this way and that way. That should work pretty well. I messed up, though. I grabbed the wrong brush. I guess it's this one I wanted. Not that this one's not useful, but okay. All right, so for now what we'll do is we'll just make this one a little bit dimmer kind of thing. And then let's just put her eyes here. Let's just trace over this. We'll make this as simple as possible. And the only reason I'm doing this is so that her eyes can be animated separately and just automatically combine with the rest. So basically her head will probably be a sub X sheet. If anybody doesn't know what a sub X, I know Darren knows what a sub X sheet is. If anybody out there doesn't know what that means, then I can explain it. Otherwise, I'll assume people know what I'm talking about. So one good, really good thing about Tahoma, I haven't used it a lot lately, but I'm using it because I've really, really been impressed with how well Tahoma really shocked me. I didn't think it was going to work out, but the way that Tahoma performs on Linux with the app image version is I mean, it probably did a better job of bringing in all my preferences and just works. Probably better than almost any instance of Tahoma that I've used, which is pretty crazy. And I do like it. If you want to deal with more complex animated scene organization where you want to have some things that are animated with bones and things like that, and you want to combine layers in ways that make sense, Tahoma is pretty much the best thing going, really, as far as that goes. All right, so now we'll come back here, and let's just keep it simple here. We'll just delete the eyes off of this layer. We don't need them. Yep. Okay, that'll work. And then we're going to delete the mouth as well. And we should probably be not stupid and name our layers. Okay, so I'm just gonna, let me check something here. Actually, you know what? B key. Okay, I like that for sketching. I like that for anime style inking. I like that for all the other kinds of inking. So I'm gonna say, I mean, I guess I could add probably should add the oil paint brush just in case I want to use it. And then what I'm going to do is, I made a new project for this this challenge. So I'm just going to save this as the default Smart Raster palette. Yes. Okay, so now the question becomes, is it going to roll in that change immediately or not? Boom. It did. Okay, cool. So that's what we wanted. All right, so with that, we can I wonder if I should maybe make this even a little smaller. Let's just do -2. I tend to like to keep it to the round numbers, but let's just try that. It doesn't really look much different, does it? What I'm wondering is, should she have something like that? I don't know. The problem with putting the tooth outside like that is probably that it makes it look like her mouth is open. So I'm going to say let's live without that. And what we'll want later is something like when she opens her mouth or she's excited kind of thing, she would probably have, honestly, it should probably be on the bottom. Something like that. And then maybe her tongue showing up as well. That's what I'm thinking. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Now, check one thing real quick. Seems like there's a little bit of anti-aliasing going on when it renders. So the fact that this is a little softer because I moved it with the selection tool, and the fact that this is a little sharper, honestly, when it renders, they're going to probably pretty much even out. And if I hit the end key, this is really small on the screen, actually, so no big deal. So this is the mouth, and we are going to take all of these. I'm going to hit Control-Shift. This is a hotkey, so you guys probably don't have this hotkey. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, where is my, I guess, collapse. Collapse means take these layers and combine them into one thing. So for me, it's Control-Shift down arrow. Save your work. When in doubt, save your work. And then if I just go Control down arrow, the way I think of it, so the way I set up the hotkeys is what I'm doing is I'm going down into it. Okay, so now I'm going down into that sub-X sheet, and of course I climb down into it and I see my other layers. If I hit Control up arrow, I'm climbing back up out of that sub-X sheet to the larger timeline or X sheet that contains other stuff that I'm going to be working with here. So is this okay? So I'm not sure which layer has the garbage there from the sketching. Sorry. There you are. You bloody villain, you. I didn't mean to hit the S key. I meant to hit the E key. But, okay. Accidentally turned off her mouth. Okay. So how is this useful? Well, here's one way it's useful. If I hit the A key, I can take the whole sub-X sheet, and what I can do is move the center so that it's right here, kind of where her neck would be. And so now I've got the ability to animate this. Obviously, we can, I think it's be a function of scaling. You know, you could use scaling to flip it, whatever you want to do. So now if we combine the, if we combine the layers, what we're going to do, actually, let's keep going. This is a very interesting exercise because you have to kind of work in reverse. You have to think about what you're going to do later at a higher level and get everything in place at a lower level so that it will actually work. So what I want to do is, and by the way, I think I've got a hotkey of tilde. Yes. And is it Alt tilde or control tilde. Okay, so on my Tahoma, if I hit tilde, what it does is it effectively solos this column. When I hit control tilde, all the columns get turned on. The downside with that approach to soloing a track is, I don't think you really can solo. What you can do is turn off everything except the one that you're in. The only time that becomes a problem is when you've got 10 columns and several of them are turned off all the time, which is basically what you're going to wind up with up here. Because once I have the thing blocked in, why do I need my guide? These are just guide layers. So let's say I have them turned off, and then what happens is if I solo this column, that's great. But if I had other stuff that was basically turned off all the time, when I hit control tilde, those would turn on as well. So it's not really a perfect solution, but it's okay. All right, so what are we going to do? Well, let's come up with some kind of palette for her. What do you find to be the least attractive hair color possible? Don't anyone take offense at this. For me, the flaming redhead just happens to be what I find to be the least attractive hair color. Not that there aren't notable exceptions, okay? But anyway, F key, boom. All right, so now let's turn that into maybe something more like this. That's too dark, obviously. I want these to be really saturated colors, by the way. Okay, so people with red hair typically have a more pale complexion. Not always, but typically do. So I'm going to grab this and make this more red. Oh, come on now. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. It's because this is her mouth. I need to go to this layer. Oh, come on. Moving a little too fast here, friends. Badoink. Okay. Now, ultimately, pretty sure I'm probably going to want to make these colors a little more muted. Interesting point, Darren. That's an interesting point because I thought about that earlier, and some of the reference stuff I looked at was definitely black and white. Well, it doesn't matter because it's easy to convert it to black and white at a later time. So I'm going to take this E key. Okay, and I think I'm going to use this color. Gosh, I really want a brush like that one up there, but let's just zoom in and see if I can nail this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like measles or something. I love it. I'm just not a freckles guy. That's why I said the other day, it's kind of strange that when I was married to someone with red hair and freckle. Crazy how those things work. Okay, that's too much, and it does, whoopsie poo. This should almost always be selected, by the way. If you click selective, then when you erase, and notably, when I erase, I'm not using the usual normal, you scrub and, that's not what I do. I never erase that way in Tahoma, really. I use freehand so that I can just lasso the stuff I want to get rid of. So, if you have this selected, it will not erase anything except that material, the red color that I have there. That's probably about right. Okay, there was something about the eyes too. Well, we'll leave them for now. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter too much. Okay, let me think about this for a minute. If you're gonna put the plastic tool on her hair, probably if you set up the structure of the plastic tool correctly, it will not matter if I apply it to just the skull and then parent like the eyes and mouth layer to that, or if I actually wrap the plastic tool around the whole drawing. So I'm going to say, actually, let me make one little correction here real quick. Fill tool. Yeah, had a little spot that was missing. So I'm going to go Control up arrow and climb up out of my sub X sheet. I'm going to hit the X key and I'm going to create a mesh. Okay, any animation that I do with her eyes or mouth will not be a problem as long as the eyes and the mouth remain inside of the region that's marked by the plastic tool with the mesh, okay? So hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to do, I always give myself a couple extra bones for controllers, and in her case, probably like 3 of these, and then I'm going to say, wait a minute. Okay, we've run into a glitchy poo. I must have already translated it. So what I need to do is grab this right here and delete that. There we go. Okay, so probably something like that. Okay, so you'll see here in a second how I kind of protect myself against things not distorting in ways I don't want them to. So I want her hair to be able to be manipulated pretty much from once it gets away from her head, like this whole region. So what you do, I'm going to actually get rid of that bone. Okay, so what you do is you put an extra bone here and then just basically flank that edge. And what that does is it means that, how did we get that? That's wrong. It means that any animation that takes place out here, this area inside here, basically her face, will be protected. So I want the head to be rigid. So let's put it in animate mode and just kind of see what we've got. Okay, so first of all, this will move everything. The entire plastic tool level can also be flipped with the translate tool, right? So there's that. Let's go back into this mode. So see that? So this can bounce around and it doesn't really affect her face. You know, a teeny weeny bit, but I mean nothing that matters. Okay, so now this makes it pretty easy to have some interesting, secondary animation, right? And so what I'm going to have to do is get her structure blocked in, which I basically have already done here, and then I have to plan out what all the animation in the timeline is going to be, and then make her body do the things they need to do at the right time, knowing that when I take her and stick her on here and parent her to one of these circles, she's going to do the things that she's going to do in the right order at the right time. That's basically the goal. So the final word on the grayscale is we can always add a filter and turn the whole thing to grayscale at any time anyway, so that's just really not a big deal. Okay. It is notable. I want to try one thing here. Let's hit the A key. So now here we have, let me think about this for a minute. Okay. You can use pegs, pegboards, or whatever they call them in Tahoma. I don't use them. When I need a dummy layer, what I do is I just put a drawing layer in there. So this is, we'll just call this controller. Okay, and all that is to control the plastic tool that is manipulating the stack of 3 layers. Now let me see something here. Okay, so this is the stack of 3 layers. It's being modulated by the plastic tool, and the plastic tool is going to be modulated by a parent. Now, you can do parenting here in the X sheet, but I prefer to do it the way that I've done it for years that I know works. So what's that? You're going to take, so this is her. This is the plastic tool that's modulating her. This is the controller that's modulating the plastic tool. So we'll just connect those. Well, we'll try anyway. We'll connect those together. And I only did this for one reason. The reason is if I hit the A key and I animate the plastic tool, and Darren, if you got some late breaking information that contradicts this, let me know. But this is, for the many years I've been using Tahoma, this has been the case. The problem is if I move this with the, what do they even call it? The animate tool or the transform tool? I don't even know what they call it. That's the selection tool. I guess it'd be this actually. So what is this? Animate tool. Okay, they call it the animate tool. So the problem is if I animate this entire thing with the animate tool, I will not be able to know where my keyframes are. Because every time I do something with the plastic tool, it inserts a keyframe, and Tahoma doesn't have a way to show you, this is the plastic tool keyframe, and on the same frame, you've also got an animate tool keyframe. Well, you can't differentiate the two. You have no way until you go into the what do they even call it? The spreadsheet thingy dingy. 100% right. Okay, yeah. So F3 is the schematic, and is it F2? Yes, F2. So if I didn't do that little hack to just use this as a simple controller for the rest, and keep in mind, by the way, if I want to, I could take her and the plastic tool and the controller, and I could collapse all of them into a sub-X sheet as well. So there's a sub-X sheet. I go down into the sub-X sheet. From there, I can go down into her. My opinion, after many years of working with Tahoma, is that this is a very bad idea. Don't do it. And the reason you shouldn't do it is because Tahoma gets confused. Okay, technically you can nest sub-X sheets. In practice, do it if you want. But generally, you don't want to go more than one level deep. That's just advice from the trenches. Okay, so where the hell is the explode? Where's the explode? Resequence? Oh, here it is. Why is it not exploding? Okay, that's interesting. Explode sub-X sheet. What the heck? Okay. So now because I did that, we've introduced this erroneous peg. I was kind of trying to avoid that, but yeah. So where is this? Is that, no, that's the camera. Oh, right. Got this erroneous group. You need to ungroup these guys. You see what happened? It's really obnoxious. So this needs to be killed. That needs to be killed. And now we're back to where we were before I did that. So just saying, once you go more than one level deep on like nesting stuff, I won't get into the things that can go wrong in terms of how it can kind of foul with your animation a bit. But the important thing is you're kind of giving yourself an apparent benefit that's actually a bit of a pain later. If you really want to do a lot of fancy schmancy nesting, you're way smarter to do it this way. Get comfortable with the schematic, because at any point in time, you can add another level or a peg or whatever, and you can actually bolt things together in the way that you prefer and work with it that way. So anyway, enough said about that. Right? Okay. So let's keep going. I will say the only thing that makes this a little less elegant, I suppose, is the fact that you've got this controller, and the controller is only controlling the head. So we're going to have, in other words, I hope this is clear to people, and maybe people don't really care, but basically here's the deal. So you've got 3 columns that all work together as a unit, you could say. You got the controller for simple translations, you got the plastic tool, and then you've got this, which is, in fact, 3 layers. Okay? Well, we're going to be adding her body and her rubber hose arms and all that. Okay? So the only reason why you might want to go ahead and do 2 levels of nesting, but dear God, don't do 3, but you might want to do 2, is just so you can take each of the main components of your character that all are interrelated like these 3 are. You got 3 columns where this one is actually 3 columns in one. Collapsing that to 1, because her body, her boobs, her hips, they may all be multi-column rigs as well. And so at some point, it does become a bit ungainly, and it becomes difficult to sort of find what you're looking for, right? So I'm just throwing stuff out there that you might bump into. Okay. Theoretically, I'm going to hit the B key and move this to the left. Why? Well, this is going to be her upper body, not the arms. And so this really should be behind the head. And in Tahoma, as you go to the right, this is composited over top of, whatever's the furthest to the right gets composited on top of whatever's to the left. So if you were going to think of it like Photoshop or something where it's a stack, the top of the stack is here and the bottom of the stack is here. Okay? Now, as far as scene management, by the way, you can collapse all these columns so that they take up way less space, and then you sort of expand them when you need to get at them and work with them. So this is going to be, I guess we'll call this her torso, right? Torso. Okay. Let me zoom out just a bit. And these, by the way, do not need to be turned on. This does. Okay, so the torso is going to, now the little ruffles, see, the ruffles would be separate. I'm inclined to make the ruffles part of the rubber hose arm. I'll just have to be a little careful on how I do the plastic tool so that I create, remember how I created these little barriers with bones to protect her face from the deformations of the hair? I'm going to want to do the same thing here, where this can rotate and move around, but you don't want it stretching and stuff. But the arms, we are going to want to have stretching. So these are just things I'm thinking about as I go. So I'm going to do it this, wrong brush there, pal. I'm just going to keep this as simple as possible for now. All right, and I'm also, for now, going to turn those off. This is another example. If these were all collapsed into a single X sheet, you could just mute them all with one button press. Just saying. Just saying. All right, so let's just zoom in here. Look at what we got. Isn't it great that I'm back and just doing animation? I'm sure everyone, the entire universe is thrilled to see that. Is that what we want to do? She's got some serious memory issues. I'm sure there's probably, I don't really love that. Okay, so conceptually, let me see. I'm kind of wanting it to be like this, I think. I'm just thinking from sort of a humor standpoint, the way I would expect this type of a thing to be. So I think something more like this actually makes more sense. Okay. Well, let's see. Hold on a second, Dave. Didn't you say that the bosom might be treated separately? Yeah, I did say that. You know what? We need to put the boobs on their own layer. Hate to say it, but there it is. Okay, well, that makes some things easier. You know, it makes things simpler. So we'll just close up the torso here. Let me zoom out and look at. I want to leave myself some room. Okay, let me explain something. This is important. For people who are trying to get more creative with Tahoma, let me make a really important point here about the plastic tool. If you're going to, like in my case, right now, what I'm thinking to myself is that there is a possibility that the shape and design of her torso might change later. So what I would do is I would actually, I would just color in an area. I could probably make, I probably should make that as big as possible, but I guess for now we'll just do that. Okay. What I would do is I would just create an area around it like that. And the reason is, let me make sure my brush is still set the way I like. Not really, but we'll skip it for now. Okay, and the reason for that is that then when I use the plastic tool, it'll create a mesh around this whole space. And as a result, the torso will be included inside of that. So if the shape of the perimeter of her torso changes, it won't matter as long as it's all inside of this colored in area. Now, I'm noticing something that's kind of bugging me a little bit. Why did the eraser not work? Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Erase. Why is it not erasing? Darren? What is going on? What, did I not turn on the eraser? Eraser. Freehand. Oh, there it is. Okay. Important Tahoma tip. This will drive you bonkers and you'll want to claw out your own eyeballs if you bump into it and don't know what to do. Okay. The eraser was set to lines. You can set the eraser to erase lines or areas. In other words, the outlines that you draw with the brush, or the fills that you use the fill tool, or you do what I just did, which is you use the this. I guess is that the Smart Raster paintbrush? Smart Raster paint tool. Okay, so if your eraser is set to lines, it won't erase this. Because when you use the Smart Raster paint tool, you're not creating lines like you usually are with the regular brush. You're actually creating filled areas. They look like lines, but they're not. So probably for most people, most of the time, having it do both is probably good practice. As you can see, it's only going to erase just this material, which is quite handy. Okay, so Control-Shift-F, that's just the fill check tool. Long as we're here, yes, I'm going to use this. I'm going to come up with the most obnoxious little color here. I'm just seeing kind of an aqua. I'm just going to keep using super bright colors, which I never do. But for this thing, I think it might be the way to go. Okay, so you'll notice that Tahoma did do a good job of filling that, even though this other stuff was in front of it. So that's good. And let's use the V key, which for me is the Smart Raster Paint tool. Okay. And gosh, I really think I want... So obviously some of these are going to get covered up by her boobage. but I felt like I wanted her to have just a nice floral pattern. We can always change the colors after the fact. That's the good thing about Tahoma. You can always, hello, you can always just, change them later if you decide you don't love what you did the first time. So. Any questions out there from the peanut gallery? Oh, there's only 2 people watching. Dudes, I am seriously just not popular. Not popular. Nope, not me. Have never been. I'm sure I never will be. I'm just not popular. Nope, nope, nope. And you know what? That's okay. I don't really care. Because I love my life. I do. All right. Little glitch right there. Whoop. Okay. So that's the torso. And I guess what we want to do is let's create a new column, insert after. Okay. And we'll hit the B key. Basically. Yes. Oh, dear. Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. I like that. Okay. These 3 materials, let's go Control C. I'm really glad that in Tahoma you can do this. Boop. Okay. So now here's what we have to do. This is kind of interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take, actually I'm going to turn this off. Okay. So if I use the Smart Raster Paint tool to create a barrier right here so that we can then fill it, it won't work. Why? I think it's a little bizarre, but it's just a thing with Tahoma. To create that edge, you've got to use the regular brush. Okay? Any areas that are created with the Smart Raster Paint tool do not act as a barrier for fill operations. Should we? I'm gonna say I'm gonna reverse this. Put daisies up here. Okay, so now I might be having a dyslexia moment. Seriously. Because what I remember is that the center of the flowers was yellow and the petals were pink. So now I'm doing it the opposite on purpose. And now Murphy's Law says I'm going to open up or turn the layer back on and find out that this is actually the way I did the other one, and I'm remembering it in reverse. Nope. Okay, so you can see what we need to do now. Oh, look at that. Okay, that's okay. I mean, that's technically okay. Let's see. Why is this not still on lines and areas? It's a little annoying. Okay, so we'll see if this works out, but basically that's what I was thinking. Nitesh 9124 said, "Hello, sir." Hello to you too, sir or ma'am. Of course, we don't know if you're a sir or a ma'am, or if you have some other interesting pronoun. Okay, so what are we going to do with these? Are we going to get a little crazy with the plastic tool? This could become complicated, friends. I'm telling you, this could get complicated. Like, for example, honestly, let's do it let's do it here. For now, oops, I didn't want that. I wanted the schematic. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I mean, you could use the plastic tool on the boobs. I don't think it's strictly necessary, though. Okay, so like in Krita, for example, if you're animating in Krita, the only way you can do complex parenting situations is basically to have folders inside of folders inside of folders, basically. Here, we can do it a more intuitive way. What we really want is for the torso to be the controller of the boobs. So the boobs are a child of the torso. Why? Well, because if the torso moves, obviously the boobs get moved along with it. But we also want all of this to be a child of the torso. Why? Well, because then if we move the torso, hit the A key, and before I do anything, I should put the center. Put the center here. Okay. I'm wanting to hit my Blender hotkeys. But as you can see, when I rotate the torso, the head gets rotated too. And if I come back here and rotate this, that introduces an interesting problem. Oh, I know what's wrong. I'm sorry, my bad. It's because I was, this is, I probably should explain it. Okay, so when you use the plastic tool, what you're doing is you're essentially drawing a mesh around the drawing, and then the mesh gets deformed. If you move, what I just did was effectively moved the image out from under the mesh, which is kind of interesting because it tells you that the plastic tool mesh is a crude compositing tool as well, because anything that's encompassed by the plastic tool that is not inside of the mesh, you can't see. Anyway, my point was this. Okay, we don't want to do that either. We definitely do not want to do that. Okay, so to the degree that we may... Oh, I know what I did wrong. See, that's what I'm saying. Once it starts getting deep, it's easy to lose track. What I meant to do was this, because this is supposed to be the controller that controls everything about the head. The problem is that its center point is in the wrong place. So we got to go to the... Where's the center? Okay. The center should be... Where it is. There it is. Right there. The center should be there. So I rotate it. Oops. I'm sorry. My bad. I'm hitting the Blender hotkeys here. Okay. So there's that. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and start... I'm going to go ahead and start developing this the way I'm actually going to do it. Okay, so what is this? What does that mean? Well, the first thing I would do is flip her head. Okay, and then let's just do rotation like that. Now, the only thing I'm not loving here... Actually, you know what? It's okay. Okay, and so now I'm going to go to the plastic tool. And yes, thank you, Darren. I just did. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that. Yeah, you betcha. Okay. Okay, so let's just say... She's standing there like this, and let's just rough map it here. Let's just rough map it. Okay, so we're gonna go to the beginning, and you're gonna have 1, 2, 3. Jeez, you got like no time at all. So you guys understand what's going on here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into object mode, and I'm gonna grab this circle right here. It's hard to see, but there it is. All right. Let's hit the play button and see what happens. You have 3.5 seconds max to do everything. What she's going to do has to happen. Let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. We're going to do a half a second. Okay, so back over here, to be perfectly accurate, this really should be back up to 24 frames per second because this cartoon is supposed to be 24 frames per second. So we're looking at what we're going to accomplish in the first 1.5 seconds, basically. Around here, she's going to be turning her head, noticing him. So what are we going to do? What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and flip it. And you can see what the problem is. Okay. So that's the intent. I have to kind of work in reverse here though. So let's delete that key. I know that after 1/2 of 1 second, yes, after 12 frames, she should basically have her head seeing him. So that by the time we get to the basically 1.5 to 2 seconds, she reacts and responds to seeing him. Okay? So that means we'll give ourselves a 1/3 of a second to just get our bearings. So let's move this keyframe to here, just so that everything starts there. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go probably, and there's things I'm keeping in mind here, like when a head turns like that, generally you want to blink the eyes. So her eyes are going to have to blink, which means we would have to have a blink roughly on frame 6. So if we want to kind of run with that, then what we would do is go into this layer, and right around here, let's put it on frame 6 and hope for the best. So now you got to transpose everything in your head because she's looking the wrong way, but it doesn't matter because, the animation still needs to happen at this pace. So the only thing I'm thinking about is not direction. That happens at a higher level. But at the low level, all I care about is what are the individual pieces supposed to do, right? Well, what they're supposed to do is okay. And this. Okay, that's interesting. Let's just think about that. I'm going to hit undo a few times. Okay, go to frame 6. Just create a new keyframe. Okay, and then this, at 24 frames per second, what I'm thinking is Control-C, Control-D. We'll do 2 frames for the blink. Okay, Control up arrow. Let's get back out of there. Hit the N key to go to actual size, which of course didn't work. I suppose that's because I'm actually creating the animation at full HD, which I don't usually do. But okay, so the K key is your rewind button in Tahoma. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so that's like really interesting because where's my blink? There might be something going on here. Am I missing something, Darren? What am I missing here? The animation's not propagating up into this layer, and I'm pretty sure I bumped into this in the past, and I'm like, I don't know why. You haven't exposed the frame from the sub-X sheet. Okay. How do you do that? I don't remember explicitly having to do that in the past. How do I expose them? I mean, a lot of things come to mind about that. One would be right-click on the sub-X sheet header and choose. Oh, that's right. That's right. We used to fight with that all the time. In fact, I remember it was, do I click in the column? Do I click in the header? So you're saying click on the header and resequence. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, brother. Okay. We're getting there. So this is just like any kind of construction or programming or, you just have to build it up one little thing at a time. And then you do run the risk that you're going to get deeply into it, and it all turns out that your timing and your idea didn't turn out as cool as you thought it would be. Trust me, That can happen. That's okay. You gotta try. You gotta try. Okay, so here. Let me think about this. Technically, if we're going to put the blink here, we probably should start the turn here. So, okay, this is going to be a rotation. You think about this. Since we're doing that, we might as well go have some fun over here too. What am I talking about? Well, right here, boom. So I think I'm going to use her hair to compensate. See, the thing is, if I'm going to do a flip, which is basically, it's like a digital flip in one frame, she just, you know, her head's facing the other way. So you want to think about, at least I do, I want to think about how do I hide that abrupt change. And one way to do it is to have some secondary animation like I'm doing here with her hair that just kind of keeps your mind engaged with it. Okay, so that would not happen. What you're seeing right there would not happen. Why? Well, because her head's got to start moving before the hair reacts. I mean, it's physics. So the hair, we'll give it a 2-frame break. I don't know if that's enough. Maybe. Let's just see what happens. Let's go here. I'm sorry, I mean here. Let's take this key, Control C, Control V, and then here, I could possibly bump into something with the plastic tool, by the way, that makes all of this not work like I think it's gonna, so just be warned. All right, so here, we would want to come back up, but we would also want to do the flip. Okay, and at this point, Control, okay, yes, sorry, my bad. That flip does have to be a single frame. Okay, so you got the rotation. Okay, I see what's going on. Okay, so this is where it does get kind of ugly, I have to admit. I have to now put in a scaling keyframe. You know, without actually doing much. Okay. I need the scaling keyframe in order to have the 1-frame flip work. Otherwise, it's going to interpolate it over many frames, which is going to look stupid. Okay. So now it's like, yeah, I'm going to have to go into the spreadsheet. Definitely. That's too bad. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but there it is. What did I say was the hotkey? Okay. So this is where it gets ugly. And I want to state this very pragmatically. What you're seeing right now is an example where you do a bunch of like rigging style animation, ostensibly to save time. And right now, in real time, right now, what you're seeing is you're hitting the point where you go, oh my goodness, I'm probably getting into a place where managing this will take probably quite a bit longer than if I just did the whole thing as straight ahead, frame by frame animation. Like literally gain nothing. But I'm going to have to look at this on the other screen so it's bigger. It's hard to read for me. Okay, that's the torso. If you tick the global key option on there before adding more keys, it'll help. Yeah, I remember that from back in the day. Let me just look here. Yeah, global, what Darren's saying, when you do a global key, what it basically does, Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, essentially what it does is what you normally don't want when you're doing animation because you wind up with a real mess of keyframes that you have to wade through. But what it does is it takes every animatable parameter and gives it a keyframe so that later you can, adjust accordingly. So, and this is one of those dyslexia moments where I have to keep thinking in reverse. And because the animation itself is being constructed in reverse, I have multiple iterations of reversing going on in my head, and it's really hard to keep track of. So right here is correct in that, well, you don't want the scaling to start here, but you want the rotation to start here, but you want the scaling to pretty much start like here. So when I look at the spreadsheet, that's the torso layer. That's not even the correct layer. So let's go here to the controller layer. And okay, so there it is. And now what you have to do is wade through the parameters to find the parameter that you want to animate and adjust the keyframes for. So you can see, I'm not complaining, guys. And Darren, you already know all of this. But what I'm saying is, this is what we're talking about. Okay? So in order to save time, I've created a situation that might take a lot longer than if I just freaking drew it. Just draw it, But we'll see. I'm going to keep seeing this through. Unfortunately, the colors on the screen are, that's a pretty stupid color scheme. That blue is completely unreadable, but there it is, friends. Okay, so here's the params. There's the scale. Okay, there it is. So what we're going to do, the rotation we don't want to mess with. So the scale, you got scale X and scale Y, but it didn't put any keyframes on the Y, so that's good. And that's because I did a flip. So all I have to do here is probably, well, can I delete those? No. Okay, so now this is where it's going to start to get annoying. Can I do this? Yes, I can do that. Okay, so now can I take this and move it? It doesn't want to let me move it. Okay, so that's going to become really annoying because now I'm fighting the interface. Now I'm dealing with the interface not wanting to cooperate with me. What do? I don't know what to do. I can't grab that. When I grab that, it starts to stretch it. So now I'm starting to get frustrated because the most obvious thing you would ever want to do is just grab the freaking keys and move them. And that's the one thing it's not letting me do. And if I select them first and then I click, I lose the selection. And so do I hit shift, but now keep my mouse held down? No, that doesn't do anything. Got a clue there? Yeah, but Darren, here's the thing. You're right. It probably would be a lot quicker. But part of the process is you have to, this is reality here. This is it. This is how the software works. So the very idea that we're going to go into the schematic and be like the one thing you can't do is just move the keys is there's no words for that. That's insane. So there's got to be a way. This has got to be simple. It has to be. But yet, what do we do? I can't even actually, maybe here's what you do. That's what you do. Okay, so what you do is, okay, so this makes sense now. Okay, what's going on is these tan colored keyframes are not keyframes, right? So the developers are correct. When I grab this and want to do something with it, I am kind of being stupid. Why? Because these are interpolated positions based on interpolating between this and this. So what you want to do is grab this left edge of it and just drag this down to where it wants to be and drag this down to where it wants to be. And then the cool thing is no matter how far apart I place these, Tahoma is going to interpolate between them. Probably about there is what I want, but we'll see. Let me move that to the other screen and hit the go button and see how it plays. Wow, not bad. I'm going to actually stretch this. Okay, her hair is still jumping up in the air. So basically, if I get this tightened up to where it actually makes sense, we'll be looking pretty good. So if she rotates her head there, then okay, so that's the interpolated key. So I would say this needs to go up. Again, sorry guys, I'm having to do the old dyslexic translations. I'm having to flip everything. Okay, we're going to ignore that for the moment. Okay, that's cool. Let's take this, Control C. Pop. Okay, so let's just say when it gets to here, I'm giving it basically a 1-frame bleed. And then I'll go like this. Let's just go into plastic tool mode again. Pop this down. Darren's screaming at his screen right now. He's going, Dave, save, save again. You're going to be punching the screen if you don't save. Okay, as you can see, it all happens so quickly that maybe your eyes are better than mine, friends, but it basically you can't see that this is what's happening, that she's being squeezed like that. Should we really tolerate that? I think not. I think not. So the answer is probably to just take this, move that. I'm guessing here. Move that to there. Let's see. Yeah, I might have to move it down one more frame, but let's just see. Oh my God, it's perfect. Okay, so the only thing that's bugging me is the dynamics on the hair are completely wrong, of course. Let's just make this a little bit later. We're just looking for when it feels good, and it has to look like it's responding to the dynamics of her movement. And I may be doing something that really doesn't make sense. Golly, you want them almost to be simultaneous, I must say. Let's look at this in slow motion. When the head goes, right there, boom. When the head goes down, right there, I'm going to actually delete these two keyframes. I'm going to delete these and so it's okay. So what we want is the starting position. Okay, start there, friends. Take the starting position, and then let's go to where her. Ignore what's happening right now. That's not supposed to be happening. Just ignore that. Pretend that her hair isn't flying up into the sky. Okay. What we want to do is say that the moment, boom, she starts to rotate, that's where we want to put this keyframe. I see why it's problematic. I think I'll put this a frame later. It's problematic because the dynamics I'm giving it are actually too exaggerated for the the amount that her head's actually turning. So can we compensate for that? Maybe. Let's see. Let's go back to rotation mode here, and let's look at. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is, well, that's my starting position. So I'm going to do a little bit of a recoil thing. Yeah, and I would basically just say that I've done a poor job of this is a cool concept, but actually what I'm doing is I'm blowing my jets too soon. See, when she turns her head around and notices him, that's when her hair should jump up in the air like, oh, she's excited. So why why waste that gag on this little head turn, especially when you consider that it's not really working? So there's her start point. This is super late. I'm just going to leave it as a little 2-frame thing. And I have to just kill these. It's just confusing me too much to have these keyframes in there. Yep. And then we'll go here. Let's see, where's the turn? The turn is there. Okay, so the turn's there. Boom. Okay, so what we're going to want to do probably is Control C, Control V, and then just have a 2-frame you know, just a little physics going on. We'll see if this plays. I kind of have an idea in my head of how this is going to go, so I could turn out to be quite wrong. All right, let's look at it. Yeah, I mean, it all goes by so quick. In fact, with that in mind, I'm going to go in and make this. I'm going to give another frame to this eye blink. This feels like it's just a little too long. And I would like the blink. The blink should flank the head turn. So this is where you got to do a little extra work because you have to go, okay, the head turn happens on frame. I should have noted this quite a while ago. The actual head turn happens on frame 14. Okay, fine. So now we go in here. I need to resequence again, by the way. So yes, Darren, I'm aware. Let's do 12 and 16. Okay. Climb up out of here. It's one of those things that I suppose once you do it, you know, it probably becomes second nature. Not bad. Okay, something about this feels wrong, though. The rotation and turn. Well, maybe this should all be a little more mechanical. And just... Okay, so... I'm going to just live with this for a minute. What's bugging me what's bugging me is the way it doesn't, the hair is not doing what I'm wanting it to do. It's not reacting to the movement. It's anticipating it, actually, which looks basically stupid. Right here, okay, I think that's better. One, baby. One. this. Right there. This is wrong. This should be coming down there, not going up. And then, okay, so you got a little dynamics there. Let's see how it feels. You know, it's not bad. I think I'm going to live with that. I'm going to go ahead and take a break and wrap it up for now. But the basic concept is okay. So anyway, thanks for the help, Darren. And I think that's it for today. And as you guys know, there will be more later. Boom.